people that know Adam here, he put out a tweet about, of course, the Tank Davis-Jake Paul boxing fight. The tweet, Gervonta is America's biggest boxing star. He's fighting another 60 pounds heavier than him because it will generate more money than a genuine fight. American audiences have disengaged with the sport. Years of BS matchmaking opened the door to clowns, and now we have a circus. Luke Thomas, what was your reaction when you saw that this fight was happening? And it is crazy where the sport of boxing is these days.
Well, we had heard at MK that this was coming for some time, so I was not blindsided by it. So that I think changes people's reactions to a degree. I mean, listen, like the reality is, I covered I think 3 of Jake Paul's boxing matches with Showtime, the 2 Woodley fights, and then the Anderson Silva fight. And then the silly ass Logan Paul Mayweather fight in Miami back in like 2020, May 2020, something like that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's not like I've not spent some time covering the sideshow, but this feels a little different to me because it doesn't feel like the sideshow anymore. It feels like this is the show. You know, I mean, Gervonta Davis cherry-picked the Lamont Roach fight. He wasn't even supposed to have that fight, and he picked it, and then it blew up in his face a little bit because he should have lost it. It was a draw, and then he gets arrested and has all these issues, and you know, and then decides to come back and fight Jake Paul. It's like that tells me that PBC is probably hurting for cash, and I don't know if Tank's hurting for cash, but it's like obviously cashing in because you know the reality is that Jake Paul is an infinitely bigger star than Lamont Roach is. And that's just a reality. But like now we're taking guys that some people have on pound for pound lists, or at least did, and they're interrupting their normal schedule of fights in order to compete against Jake. That's not what happened with Woodley. That's not what happened with Anderson. And that's not even what, I mean, Logan Paul and Mayweather was like the definition of sideshow. Like Floyd had been way done for years. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it felt like a frivolous extra. It didn't feel like, to me anyway, at the time. And again, if people like Jake Paul's fights, if they don't, you know, to me, he's like been the king of sandbagging. This is a pound, or at least a guy who's at least ostensibly pound for pound, but you know, the weight difference is so extraordinary. It's insane. I don't know. It just seems to me like people go to Jake Paul when they're looking for a big payday. You know, that's a payday that Woodley could not get in UFC, certainly at that time at which he got it. Like he couldn't get that. And same for Anderson. Same for Nate Diaz. I didn't cover that fight, but it's the same thing for Nate Diaz. And you could pick a bunch of other ones too. The reality is like now I think boxing itself in the United States anyway is going hat in hand and asking him for a payday. And I just think that kind of tells you the state of the sport in the country right now.
I just think it's fascinating how Jake Paul is basically the guy that saw this gap, like from a business perspective, and has capitalized on it to this degree. But like just speaking on the fight, what are you even expecting from this fight? You spoke about said weight, like
just about. This is not universally true. Okay. Like the knockout of Woodley in the second fight, the knockout itself was spectacular. Mm-hmm. And there's been some other rounds that maybe were reasonably interesting, but by and large, Jake Paul's fights suck ass, right? Like over the course of the bouts themselves, how many times have you ever left feeling like, wow, I really got my money's worth, or at a bare minimum, like my attention, my time, like this was a good use of my time. Most of the time a Jake Paul fight ends and you're like, Jesus, what was the fucking point of that? You know, like whether he's overmatched against Mike Perry or, you know, he's taking it easy on like a nearly 70-year-old man. It's like, what are we doing? So like, you know, if everyone knows the score, if they were the same size, Gervonta would, you know, lay him out pretty easily, but they're not. There's a gigantic difference. Tank's got big power that should carry, but it probably doesn't carry that high where you're talking about a guy being 200 pounds. So I expect, dude, this is what Gervonta's up against, bro. Like, again, who's got better boxing skill? Gervonta by a million miles. And if it's an exhibition, I don't think it goes in the record, or maybe they'll fudge that rule somehow. But, dude, Jake Paul could win that. Like, Jake Paul could win that. That's, like, kind of crazy to think. Not because he's better, but because, again, advantages that are conferred with the enormous size difference. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that this, again, it's not like I'm offended by the bout. I'm not offended by the bout, but it just feels like, Jesus, this is the best that you can do in American boxing. That is bad.
He's a great promoter, but the career has been lackluster. It'll be interesting as well because he's going to just use his size beyond Tank, try to exhaust him, and I could really see this kind of going out into like a decision where fans are going to be like, "Oh my God, what did we just watch?" You know what I mean?
And also, like, dude, Tank's a dynamic puncher, right?
Yeah,
but you're not going to be a dynamic puncher with a guy that big. So, like, what if like Tank loses and comes off looking like he can't hurt a guy who is not supposed to be very good? Like, you and I understand that the weight classes exist for a reason, but you know, there's a lot of ways where he gets paid off of this and then just comes off looking real bad, you know?
If he does lay Jake Paul out, though, is that the end? Like a lighter guy like Tank laying out Jake Paul, or do you reckon this continues?
As long as there is a name they could put across from him that people would pay money to see and or that Netflix would be interested in, it will continue. But I just find the notion of Gervonta laying him out not very... I mean, of all the ways that goes, I would not put that at the top of the list. It's possible, but again, dude, like there's going to be a big difference in size and a huge difference. Dude, if there's a 20-pound difference in size, that's enormous. We're talking upwards of 70 or more. Like, dude, that's an insurmountable level of difference, right? I mean, that's literally insurmountable, where you can be kind of okay/bad at one weight, but if it's sufficiently bigger than someone where they're really good but much smaller, like that's not even as good as they are, that's not enough difference to make up. Like, that's how important size is. This is what I mean. Like, dude, Gervonta's running a bit of a risk here.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating as well because the way to beat him is not going to be the most exciting game plan for Jake Paul as well. So people are going to be in for an interesting night on Netflix.